Okay, let's first take a look at the direct variation and inverse variation summary worksheet. On this worksheet, the first two questions is basically going to summarize the difference between a direct variation and an inverse variation. When you are looking at a direct variation, its graph, just remember you're looking at a line that crosses through the origin, and it's a diagonal line. Okay, it can have a negative slope like that. It can have a positive slope like this one. And sometimes, depending, it'll only show you one quadrant, usually quadrant 1, and you'll see a line that starts at the origin and then extends out. But as long as it starts at the origin, this is still direct variation. Okay, so graphically, you're looking at a diagonal line cutting through the origin. Okay, now let's compare that to what an inverse variation would look like. An inverse variation does not have diagonal lines, does not have straight lines, and it doesn't touch the origin. In fact, it doesn't even touch the x and y axis. It may look like it should, but it doesn't. It could do that. It could also do this. Okay? Now let's compare the equations. Now if you take a look at the direct variation, you see that's a diagonal line, so that you know it falls into the y equals mx plus b type of equation, but the b for every direct variation has to be 0 because it goes to the origin. So your equation of a direct variation will always be y is equal to kx, which is really the same as saying y is equal to mx. So in other words, the slope, it is the k, called the constant of variation. Okay, an example of direct variation equations could be y is equal to 3x. And if this is my equation, then I know that the k is 3. It could also be this. Y is equal to x over 3. Because remember, x over 3 is the same as saying y is equal to 1/3 times x, which means k is 1/3. Okay, now let's take a look at inverse variation. Now with inverse variation, you're looking at an equation where basically the x is going to be in the denominator. So y is equal to k over x. An example of this could be y is equal to 3 over x. If that's the case, then k is equal to 3. Y is equal to negative 6 over x, where k is equal to negative 6. Okay, so hopefully that you have a better idea of what an inverse variation is and what a direct variation is. One thing I did want you to notice is I want you to notice for both of these, especially for the direct variation, you don't have, your b is a 0. Okay, so your y-intercept is a 0. So if you ever get an equation that says y is equal to 4x plus 1, this cannot be a direct variation, okay, because it does not cross through the origin, it crosses through 1. And same thing with the inverse variation. You don't have any constant terms, meaning you wouldn't have something like y is equal to 3 over x minus 1. Okay? Okay, let's go ahead and take what we know now and apply it to number 3 to figure out if equations are direct variations or inverse variations. Alright, let's take a look at the first one, number 3. 3a. Okay, y is equal to negative 3x clearly falls into the form of y equals kx, which means that this is a direct variation, and the k is going to be the negative 3, right here. Okay, there's my k. Take a look at b. Now with b, I want you to notice that the x is in the denominator, which means by default, since it's obviously, it's in the denominator, it's got to be an inverse variation, since I'm telling you it's either direct or inverse. I'm using that same strategy. Let's just go through and eliminate some of these some more. We can see that D is also an inverse. E is also an inverse, okay? So for B, my k is 6. For D, my k is 7. And for E, my k is negative 2. Okay, now let's take a peek at number 5. Now for 5, to get y by itself, we're going to divide both sides by 5, which means y is equal to x over 5. Okay, the denominator is in the numerator, so I know that this is a direct variation. And in order to figure out what the k is, just remember, you can rewrite this as y is equal to 1/5 x, which means k is 1/5. Okay, let's move on over to choice F. Okay, option F. For this question, you've got to get y by itself once again. So to do that, let's multiply by the reciprocal of 1/2, which is 2, or 2 over 1. So the equation is y is equal to 6/4 x. Okay, so clearly this is a direct variation. Where k is, actually, k is 6 over 4, but it can be reduced to 3/2. Okay, hopefully after this first little section, you've got a good idea of what a direct variation, inverse variations might be. I'm going to stop the video and start another one to explain the next section.